Cars say a lot about who we are.
It represents freedom for a lot of people.
This season on Drive, I'm going to talk to all sorts of different people.
I looked at car names.
Yes.
And
yes.
I found all the car names that have science or astronomically
it's
inspired.
Crazy.
It's huge.
It is. Yes, I happen to be CEO of Ford Motor Company. For me, it's all about cars, movement, and our mutual passion for things that get us around. This is Drive, and I'm Jim Farley.
That's right. This is the Sportsman's Voice podcast. I am your host, Fred Berg. Thanks so much for tuning in. Before we get to this week's guest, let us check in on the stories happening across the nation with this week's TSV Roundup. Welcome, everybody, into this week's TSV Roundup for the week of March 18th. This week is brought to you by Oregon State Fish and Wildlife, doing some good things as far as CWD. House of Representatives okays pair of firearm bills in Oklahoma. New Jersey caucus co-chair gets an award. ACE Reauthorization Act on the Hill. And this week's lead story, boy, oh boy, stand by for this one. We got an action alert for you out of Kentucky. They, in very short, are trying to get their fish and wildlife to fall under the Department of Agriculture. Joining us for this lead article recap is author, writer, and my colleague, Connor Barker out of the Bluegrass State. Connor, welcome in. Tell us all about the craziness that is happening in Kentucky with Senate Bill 3.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks, Fred, for having me on to talk about an important issue that we've been working on here in my home state of Kentucky. Like you had said on there previously, the Senate Bill 3 is a bill that would completely restructure the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. Two main things we're concerned with here is that, one, this would administratively attach, I'm going to refer to Fish and Wildlife moving forward. This would administratively attach Fish and Wildlife to the Department of Agriculture. And then most importantly, Kentucky is, their Fish and Wildlife Commission has 9 members representing 9 districts throughout the state. It has a really unique appointment process as it's set up now. Whenever one of those seats is up, there are sportsmen's meetings held in that district. There are 5 of the highest vote getters from those meetings that are held and nominated by sportsmen that are then sent to the governor to be appointed and then has to be confirmed by the Senate. So the way it currently stands, it does not have any agricultural interest in this. And what this bill would do is it would give the Commissioner of Agriculture the appointment power over all 9 commission seats, which is 100% of our Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Commission that votes on our hunting and fishing regulations here in the Bluegrass State. So for obvious reason, that's very concerning and alarming, and I'm sure you can attest to this being in the Northeast, that it's not uncommon that in certain states or some states that you see the Commissioner of Agriculture or whoever that may be, President of the Senate, whatever that may be, you see that sometimes where they can get a couple of appointments, 2 out of a dozen or something like that. But in this case, it goes from 0 to 100 with all of our commission seats being appointed by the Commissioner of Agriculture. And then in addition to that, currently 3 of those seats sets vacant and 2 of those commissioner seats are on extended terms. So there are 5 nominees currently in the works that are waiting to be confirmed and appointed and confirmed on our commission. So that's 5 seats out of 9. So that's a majority. And this bill, if you go to the bottom of it, page 56 of this bill as it was originally written and currently stands, has an emergency clause that would make it to where all of, or 5 of those commission seats, if this bill is upon its signature and when it's enacted, this bill would give the Commissioner of Agriculture the ability to remove the current appointees, so 5 of those, and put this in the hands of the appointees in the hands of the Commissioner of Agriculture, which could have an immediate effect on our commission. And just so that we're clear here, this is not something that we're not out against the agriculture community here, and I can't speak to this, but I don't think the agriculture community necessarily wants this, and it's kind of been put upon them. But agriculture and sporting communities do have some similarities, especially in the East. Some of our states, and a lot of our states, I guess, in the East, 90% of fish and wildlife management is occurring on private lands, or I guess 90% of our lands are private lands where fish and wildlife management is occurring. So it's important to note that, and a lot of these are farms and so on and so forth. And it's not really, ag is certainly not an enemy here, but there's certainly better ways to go about this, and especially just such a drastic change all at once. This is tied up in political issues that stem back multiple multiple governors and so on and so forth. There, we won't get into that here, but this is certainly not the best long term solution here. And just to give an update on the bill, unfortunately, despite a ton of sportsman opposition, and as you can see in our TSV this week that I encourage you to go read that Fred highlighted already, this is certainly a big issue, and it's garnered national attention from media outlets and partners. We've got an action alert here at CSF with I would guess probably around a dozen or so partners. I'd have to go count to be specific, but people reaching out to us and saying, "Hey, what's going on with this?" We're hearing from sportsmen from across the country on this, and it's garnered a lot of attention. And we've sent out a lot of messages. As far as our action alert has generated a lot of messages, I guess, going out to legislators here in the Bluegrass State. When we're having these conversations and we're trying to oppose this bill, we're hearing like, "Yeah, I've heard from my constituents," which is great, and we're seeing that democratic process work here, and it's working. It received a narrow yes vote on the Senate floor, unfortunately, after it was referred out of the Senate Agriculture Committee. A 20-16 yes vote there with one abstaining vote. Senator Robin Webb, who has served on our NASC Executive Council, former guest of the podcast, I believe, former NASC EC president, and current Kentucky caucus chair, has been a champion for our side. She gave outstanding testimony, both in committee and then again on the Senate floor, sporting her CSF National Assembly of Sportsmen's Caucus's orange hat. And it's been it's been a pleasure to work with her, and she's going to continue working this bill moving forward. And we're working directly with her and our Kentucky Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus and our partners here. But the North American model, at the end of the day, has been working in Kentucky. Kentucky is a renowned state for hunting, fishing. Whether that's hunting the largest elk herd east of the Mississippi in the eastern part of the state in the mountains where I grew up, or going and doing some duck hunting in the western part of the state. Everything in between, trophy fisheries, depending on what you're after there. It's worked, and it's managed our fish and wildlife resources well for decades now. And Senator Webb highlights this in her testimony, and no one knows it better than her, being involved with our commission and being involved with our agency throughout the years. But what we have works. Are there political issues regarding some of these appointments? Sure. No system's perfect, but Senator Webb mentions this as well. Kentucky's the envy of the nation in a way on how our appointment process works, that we get to have sportsmen's input. And it's something that we want to see maintained. It's something that we would certainly encourage our sportsmen's community, the legislature, as well as our agency folks, for everyone to come together on this and be able to come to a solution and address concerns from all sides, rather than a bill being dumped on the last day possible during Senate intro deadline, the last hour, the last day possible to introduce bills. Low bill number is a Senate priority bill. Unfortunately, it was dropped then, and it's been moving quick. To my knowledge, as this has been recorded, it has not been taken up by a House committee yet. There's just a handful of legislative days left in the session. That's quickly approaching, so we're hoping there's no action there, but there is. CSF will certainly be on the ground. I testified on this bill, as you've probably seen in a previous TSV, when it was in Senate Ag, working with Senator Webb there and our partners, alongside a lot of our sporting partners. The list is too long to go on, but there's certainly plenty of them. And we'll be doing the same thing moving forward in the House. We're hoping this bill ends up not getting picked up, or our sportsman community can kind of work here to get this to an end. And then I'm sure this won't be the last of this, but we encourage our partners and so on and so forth in the legislature to work with us here and come to a solution that can benefit our sportsmen and women, and maintain that heritage that we have here in Kentucky, as far as our storied resources that I've enjoyed since I was a kid, and I'll continue to enjoy, hopefully. And I just wanted to express that our conflicts here and these agriculture interests sometimes don't go hand in hand with our fish and wildlife interests in the North American model. And we've got concerns about the bill, and hope to work this out moving forward, Fred. But I think that's a good summary, and I don't want to ramble on forever, but it's certainly a big issue we're working here. So,
Well, very well articulated. I should have just hit the the go button, just walked away and handled some chores while you were going. That's fantastic. Connor and CSF have been on this since the start. Definitely to your point, we saw this towards the end of last week, or especially over the weekend, blow up socially. Lots of influential brands, personalities, et al. Really jumped all over this, and to your point, it nationally blew up, and again, rightfully so. Just like we saw out in Colorado with the foolishness around cats. It's good to see the entire nation rally around some of these insane points. Now, we have had, as been covered on this program, we've talked about fish and game commissions and boards being, putting the fox in the hen house, as it were, where they're trying to submit language and change how these nominating processes and who is actually allowed to be nominated and put on these boards and commission. But this isn't the first time I've seen this, as far as taking the Department of Fish and Game, or whatever it's called in your state, and ceding it to Department of Ag. Or in some states, they try to put it under the Department of Safety in the past, New Hampshire being a great example of that, more from a law enforcement aspect. But in New Hampshire specifically, there was funding issues, and they were trying to find a way to put more money towards it. In other states, it's a power grab, and there's monetary interest in big ag. I can speak to next door here in Maine. They futzed around with the turkey season and bag limits because coastal big ag kept vilifying the turkeys for crop damage, for making their cows sick. Not based in science, just anecdotally based on turkeys are a victim of the time they're up, where all the other crepuscular creatures and creatures of the night were actually doing the damage, but because farmers don't see them out during the day, they don't correlate or have empirical data to back up their claims. Regardless of all that, what do you think, or what can you identify is the motivation? You referenced some past political strife that is continuing to bubble up here. Is this carryover from multiple administrations, or is there an actual motivation here to fund the department one way or another, or is this seemingly a power grab?
Yeah, Fred, that's a good point to mention, and I'm glad that you brought up, how other states, similar things have came up in other states too. And as we're aware, there's no current state agency there's no current state agency, Fish and Wildlife Agency, whatever it might be, in the country that's both under the Department of Ag, and every single appointment position goes to the Ag Commissioner. But as far as, we could have a whole other podcast on this, but I've been in and around Kentucky my entire life. I'm from here, I still live here, and I've been a sportsman. I kept up with these issues prior to coming on with CSF a little less than a year ago. There certainly is some political tension there with the current governor's administration, and have led to some issues in the past with Fish and Wildlife. And I think that stems from a lot of this too. But then again, it's another bill that this would have been, take power away from the governor. There's been several bills brought forth among different issues there. Move in the state here, and there was a floor amendment, the one floor amendment in the Senate that came out with this bill that was added, also took the Horse Racing Commission, which was, I can't speak to this specifically, but I'm pretty sure the Horse Racing Commission was also under a cabinet of the governor, and it now is trying to put that under Ag. So it was added on to this bill. So that kind of, without me speaking to certain things here, that certainly kind of gives us an idea of what this bill's going at. But yeah, there's certainly some issues there that in the state. But this, doing this is definitely not the way to address this. Senator Webb had a floor amendment as well that wasn't put on the bill and was eventually withdrawn. But a lot of the issue is with the time that it takes to appoint commissioners, with the strife with the governor's office and in the Senate at times. The feet have been dragged on confirming appointees by the governor, and ultimately leading to seat vacancies. And Senator Webb had proposed a floor amendment there that could be a good solution to this, proposing a deadline like, hey, these commissioners have to be appointed by X date, or we move to the next one on the list, rather than going an entire session or a year. I think it's currently a year they have to appoint the person or the appointee, which is a really long time. They have now till X date, I can't remember what it was, but to X date to make this appointment, or we're going on to the next one. To try to speed up this process and make it to where there's no vacancies on the commission, on our regulatory commission that sets our Fish and Wildlife commission or our regulations here in Kentucky. So, but
You
yeah,
gotta
to answer your
imagine
question, yeah,
taking up to a year to seat a commission member. I don't know what the terms are in Kentucky, but I mean, some have 2-year terms. A state like New Hampshire has 5 years. I mean, if you're on a 2-year term, half your term is just it's just sitting there waiting, or however it works. I've been more, it's a waste of time. It sounds like, and again, you reference a great champion for sportsmen in Kentucky and for CSF. Senator Webb was onto something. It's too bad that amendment wasn't adopted. Um, Seems like a more rational way of getting business done instead of completely restructuring how government is done and absorbing one department into another.
Sure. Our big concerns here is just, really going back, and you did a good job hitting on it earlier after I spoke, to science-based fish and wildlife management that does not include industry influences. And certainly the ag industry in a lot of, more rural states like Kentucky has a lot of interest in, whether it be intentional or not. Again, I said, not hating on the ag community here by any means. And I don't know if they really want this or not, but have been put on them with this Senate Bill 3. But it's an industry that has a lot of funds and money going through it, and a lot of influence here in Kentucky. So we don't want our Department of Agriculture writing our CERVID policy, or especially with CWD concerns. Kentucky got their first CWD case back in December of 2023, just a few months ago. So it's more important now than ever to maintain that science-based wildlife management here in Kentucky and in all of our states.
And it's vitally important to have the professionals and the people that are vetted, that understand the science, understand the work that's being done on the ground, and how to manage all of that, game and non-game species alike, and habitat management, and let them work in concert with the leadership so that you're getting the right people on your state board commission to continue
Sure.
the work and be able to set those seasons and dates and regulations, all of that. You start bringing in unqualified folks or people that have different motivations, it could get messy real quick.
Sure. And like I said, whether that's intentional or not,
Right.
that's if ag folks are coming in there and, it's, unintentionally saying, as a farming interest, and something gets pushed forth, and especially if, 5 of those 9 seats, that's all it takes to end up really influencing how or wildlife policy is formulated here in Kentucky.
No doubt. Connor, what are next steps? We do have the action alert that is still active. So tell the people listening and legislators, hopefully they're hearing some of this. I would, nothing would make me happier than to have some Kentucky legislators listening to this and getting some of their questions answered as to why this is a bad idea. What are next steps?
Yeah, sure, Fred. Like I'd said earlier, we have our action alert, and you just hit on that again. It's currently up. If you're a Kentucky resident, please go fill that out. That it populates based on your zip code. It'll send it to your specific state senator and state representative with a populated message that expressing our concerns as a sportsman's community. As this bill moves forward, we'll continue to keep that updated as far as where the bill's at in the process. With our marketing department, we're also working on a social media campaign here to kind of get the word out there. So I encourage you to visit CSF socials. That should be up any time now as far as getting that out and getting the word out, because we're in the second chamber here. We're halfway there. Even if we get a governor's veto, an override, would probably be likely with the legislature here in Kentucky. So we have an opportunity in committee. If the bill gets taken up, I'm fine if it doesn't, because that makes my life easier. And along with everybody else trying to fight this
Yeah.
bill. Then after that, it would go to the House floor, and that's those 2 steps there. We really just need your help reaching out to your representatives there, other sportsmen's organizations. You name it, there's probably an action alert on it. I've seen a ton of them, and just going out there and really just spreading the word, getting your voice heard, participating in the democratic process. And yeah, and if you have any questions whatsoever, reach out to myself or my colleague, John Colclazier, who's our Southeastern States Director, well versed in this. And if you have questions about your state, or how this plays into the bigger picture, and how this is really panned out in other states as far as commission requirements, commission appointment process, whatever that may be. CSF has somebody on staff, Fred, John, whoever that may be, covering that region that can answer your specific questions and address your concerns.
Good work, Connor. Do keep us updated. We look forward to hopefully finding out of this bill with action alerts, with the community rallying around Kentucky, that this is killed. This doesn't advance any forward. And again, fingers crossed, we look to some positive reporting on that. Thanks so much for joining us, my friend. Continue good work, and we'll catch up with you real soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred.
All right, brother. Want to thank Connor for taking the time out of his very busy day to come on and talk about the action alert and the storm they've got going on in Kentucky. There's a lot there. So check out the TSV publication. Sign up for it. I keep saying it every week, guys. You're going to get the latest and greatest there. You can sign on, make your voice heard, and use us as a resource in real time, keeping you up to date with what's going on all over the country. And with that, let's get into the rest of this week's Roundup, starting on the Hill. Our Director of Federal Policy, Taylor Schmidt, brings you this. The ACE Reauthorization Act, CSF top priority, passes the Senate committee unanimously. That's always good when people can do things together. The Senate Environment and Public Works Committee passed Senate 3791, America's Conservation Enhancement Reauthorization Act, on a unanimous vote, a sign of widespread support for the legislation. The legislation was led by EPW Chairman and Congressional Sportsman Caucus member Senator Carper and EPW Ranking Member and CSC member Senator Capito. The senators joined in leading the legislation by CSC co-chairman John Bozeman and CSC members Senator Mullen and Wicker, as well as Senators Cardin, Padilla, Whitehouse, and Van Hollen. Specifically, the ACE Reauthorization Act includes important programs such as North American Wetlands Conservation. The ACE Reauthorization Act will increase the North American Wetlands Conservation authorization level from $60 million annually to $65 million annually, and also provides a strategic investment in conserving and restoring degraded wetlands across North America. Since its inception 35 years ago, North America Wetlands Conservation has provided over $2.1 billion in federal grants, and that has leveraged nearly $4.3 billion in non-federal contributions. In total, there have been over 3,300 projects that have contributed to the conservation of nearly 32 million acres of wetlands in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Additionally, this legislation reauthorized national fish habitat conservation through partnerships and increases the funding levels from $7.2 million to $10 million annually. Lastly, the ACE Reauthorization Act will provide a 5-year protection to prohibit the EPA from regulating the use of lead fishing tackle under the purview of the Toxic Substance Control Act. EPA has consistently reaffirmed state management authority of lead fishing tackle, and this legislation will ensure the EPA cannot be petitioned to regulate lead tackle for a period of 5 years. CSF would like to thank Chairman Carper, Capito, and all the leaders of this legislation, as well as EPW committee, for favorably advancing this bill. It's nice to bring some good news. That's great news there from Federal Policy Director Taylor Schmitz. Let's head west to Oregon. Fish and Wildlife receives CWD funding thanks to sportsmen and women. Let's get into it. Recent detections of CWD in Idaho County highlighted the need for action in Oregon, especially along the northeastern border. The Oregon Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus supported funding for CWD mitigation through House Bill 4148. While House Bill 4148 stalled, nearly $800,000 in funding for CWD management was included in the 24-25 budget through a collaborative effort supported by CSF.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Idaho County, home to 14 and 15 units 14 and 15, runs along the northeastern border of Oregon, raising concerns that infected deer could carry the disease across the border, impacting Oregon's herds. While the states in the Pacific Northwest have not yet reported detections of CWD, nearby states such as Idaho have detected CWD. Knowing this, states like Oregon and Washington are ramping up their testing efforts and creating response plans that will be activated in the event of positive tests, as early detection and mitigation are vital to containment. Oregon Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus Advisory Council member Amy Patrick has been leading the charge for over 2 years with the help of CSF. Caucus co-chairs and Oregon Sportsmen's Conservation Partnership, the Sportsmen's Caucus, and OSPC rallied around House Bill 4148. Co-sponsored by Caucus co-chair Representative Mark Owens, 4148 would have provided funding for both CWD mitigation and other key efforts. While the bill appeared to stall, sportsmen and women again rallied in Oregon, sending over 34,000 emails to legislators with the help of the OSCP members. While 4148 failed to pass this session, CWD funding was added at the end of the session through Senate Bill 5701. The addition of Section 445 gives the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, aforementioned, nearly $800,000 for activities to detect chronic wasting disease. Good news for once out of Oregon, and hopefully they can keep that horrible stuff at bay and not across their political boundaries. Good luck to Oregon. Let's head east to the middle of the country to Oklahoma. House of Representatives okays a pair of farm bills in OK. Brought to you by last week's guest, Kent Keene. The why it matters here, particularly during election years, legislation regarding firearms, both good and bad, dominates much of the conversation among state legislators. Often, these efforts align closely with the priorities of one major political party or the other. However, there are ideas that truly transcend party lines in support of our shared mission of increasing firearm safety among America's law-abiding sportsmen and women. Members of the Oklahoma Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus are currently leading such an effort in the Sooner State. Oklahoma House of Representatives recently passed 2 bills, HB 3427 and 3429, led by Oklahoma Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus member Representative Nick Archer. 3427 would create an income tax credit program for firearm owners who purchase an eligible firearm safety device, such as a safe, case, or lockbox. 3427 passed out of the House with strong bipartisan support. 3429 would create a sales tax holiday for qualifying rifle ammunition purchases during the weekend preceding Oklahoma's firearm deer hunting season. Firearm policy remains one of the most polarizing topics across the country. Because of this, the CSF State's program team remains steadfast in our efforts to defend our firearm rights during state legislative sessions. While firearm policy is often the source of partisan divide, some efforts designed to improve firearm safety have the ability to transcend party lines and bring legislators together. Let's head to the East Coast. New Jersey, a mention of award here for caucus co-chair. In the Garden State, this is brought to you by Kaylee Lear, Mid-Atlantic State's Senior Coordinator. In the Garden State, successful passing of pro sportsmen and women's legislation is an uphill battle, to say the least. New Jersey Senator and Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus co-chair Parker Space continues to be a champion of sportsmen and women, and because of his dedication, he was awarded with the New Jersey Outdoor Alliance Conservation Leadership Award. NJOA presents this award to an individual annually for outstanding stewardship and for being a voice of sportsmen and women in New Jersey. It is a challenge. I don't think that's a secret, especially over on the East Coast. New Jersey, New York, it's just all up and down the 95 corridor, it seems, from the Mid-Atlantic north is challenged. So this is a testament to the good work done here. Some highlights for the senator. Senator Space was instrumental in passing a key pro-sportsman and women's legislation, such as the apprentice firearm and bow hunting license back in 2014-2015 session. The use of dogs to recover deer while hunting in the 2016-2017 legislative session. And most recently, last year, Senator Space fought for the passage of A5495 that allows hunters to legally carry concealed handgun while bow hunting in New Jersey and within New Jersey's current law. So congratulations to Senator Space and being a champion, boots on the ground there in New Jersey, where it is a challenge for sure. That's it, guys. That's this week's TSV Roundup. Thanks so much for joining us. Again, back to the lead story. If you need to get involved and you are a Kentuckian, please do so. Please answer the call. Please make calls, send emails. See that wildlife management remains in the hands of the professionals and doesn't become a political football and stays right where it needs to. And please make sure you're subscribing, listening to our TSV podcast. Obviously, you're here, and the weekly EPUB to stay up to date on all things happening across the country. CSF is your inside connection to outdoor legislation, as always, and we are a valuable resource to you, the public, as well as you, the listening policymaker, the legislator, looking for answers or understanding why an introduced piece of legislation is good for the sporting community or bad. And we aim to please and help out where we can. That's this week's roundup, like I said, for the week of March 18th. We will see you next week. Until then, see ya. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.